Also clear, some advice that Charles Barkley gave a camera directly last night. Nico Harrison, stop giving press conferences. Such good advice.
I like, though, how he prefaced it with, I like you a lot. You're my friend. And then he tells everybody, but at the same time as telling him, you need to stop being stupid.
That's right. And good advice. That's what friends do. Usually more privately than that. Often more privately than that. But here is the commentary after Nico Harrison has given a press conference in which he said he knew there would be backlash on Luka, but he didn't know how much backlash. He knew that the city had a relationship with Luka, but he didn't know how close the relationship actually was or how much it would hurt. He underestimated
So
it.
he had an open-door press conference after he had the closed-door press conference. I don't understand the press conference strategy at all. How about no press conferences?
Okay, so you're a journalist. I'm not. I'm dopey. Can you help me understand? Because I have that question too. How last week do you have a closed session? You handpick which media members are allowed to come to the closed session. No video, no recorders. And then yesterday, everyone's invited. Everyone can record. So, like, literally, from a journalistic standpoint, what is the thought process there?
All right, let me take you through some of this because when you say journalistically, I believe this is a bunch of people who are in over their head, who are getting just dragged by a public relations problem that they don't have the ability to solve because you don't want to put the owner. You don't want to put the owner's nepotism in front of cameras, so this is your face. This is your new Mark Cuban. Mark Cuban used to handle all this face and voice stuff for you. It didn't even matter who the coach was. And so now you've got a guy that Mark Cuban hired, but Mark Cuban is distancing himself from doing all the public-facing stuff on this because now he is simply a receptacle for all of the bad stuff. They don't want ownership around this stuff. So let's start with Nico Harrison and what it is that he had to say yesterday in the open-door press conference as opposed to the closed-door press conference.
I did know that Luka was important to the fan base. I didn't quite know it to what level. But really, the way we looked at it is, you know, if you're putting a team on the floor that's Kyrie, Clay, PJ, Anthony Davis, and Lively, we feel that's a championship caliber team, and we would have been winning at a high level, and that would have quieted some of the outrage. And so, unfortunately, we weren't able to do that.
One of the things he said that we didn't even air is just flatly, I think I've done a good job, which you just can't give Piranha that kind of meat right now. You cannot keep this story out there every time you speak because we need to feed on something, and any sentence you say, we will take. It's why Charles Barkley's given him good advice. Zaslow, your thoughts here?
Yeah, I think it's interesting that Cuban has completely, in my opinion, has completely skated on all of this. If you want to blame Nico Harrison, fine, deserves all the blame. You want to blame new ownership, fine, deserve all the blame. But how does Mark Cuban get to just be the former owner who sits there and is so distraught with what's happened to his franchise, while then also going and checking his bank account where he sold the team for $5 billion to these people? So let's start there. If you have an NBA team for sale, there's no shortage of buyers. I mean, that's a sign of prestige in this country if you own an NBA franchise. He decided to sell to these people with no care for basketball. It's a business that's they could do what they want. But he chose to sell it to them. He chose to go with the highest bidder. That, to me, doesn't feel like someone...
A group that is questionable, incidentally.
Yes.
Like a group that you don't even have to do much in the way of background checks to be like, oh, those people, you don't want to be selling anything to those people.
But he went with the highest possible bidder, which is his right as a businessman. But if I'm a Mavs fan, I don't love that. I'd rather you make sure that you hand over what you've helped build for the last 20-plus years to someone who's going to continue to caretake that franchise in the city. He did not do that. He took the highest bidder. Again, his right. The second part, he hired Nico Harrison. The new ownership didn't hire Nico Harrison. He hired the guy who didn't know how popular Luka Doncic is. And Mark Cuban gets to just sit there all distraught. I can't believe what's happened to my beloved franchise. How does Cuban skate through all of this?
It's a good question. We'll attack it in a second. Here's Barkley saying, Nico Harrison, you're my friend. I love you. Shut the hell up.
Listen, man, I consider you a friend of mine, Nico Harrison. I consider you a friend of mine. I wish you nothing but the best. I thought you did a good job last year with the Mavs, and obviously whatever happened this year didn't work out. Man, don't do no more press conferences. Like, I don't even know what you're doing. I really don't. Like, I got sympathy and love for you, but I have zero idea what you're trying to do. This war is over, brother. You got to taking the L. I hope you keep your job. I hope that team get healthy. But, man, don't do any more interviews.
So there was a closed-door meeting last week where there was not supposed to be any sort of like video or audio recording, but apparently it was like so bizarre that they were reporters that were invited were eventually able to write from their transcript and report on it. And then this, I believe, the most recent press conference where he was on camera was like the end of the season one. So that was why there were two different. But the first one, I think like a lot of reporters were saying was just kind of weird and unnecessary.
Well, why was the first one needed if he's going to do his end of the year press conference?
Probably
control it more.
Yeah, to like, I don't know.
There were some really bad answers in that one.
Get a gauge on what he was going to be asked in this one, I guess.
The gauge.
I'm not sure.
Was it Kalashaw that asked?
Tim
like,
McMahon.
It was Tim McMahon about the timeline.
Grilled him.
Yeah, and he's like, I'm just trying to use your logic here on extending your timeline. You had a championship team. Meanwhile, this team was a Western Conference champion last year. They don't make it out of the play-in this year. Yet no one in the right mind would describe that as a good job.
All right, let's discuss this from this angle, right? Because what the Mavericks are articulating through their shamed face and voice right now is, we know we have a PR calamity. We don't know how to handle the PR calamity. How many PR calamities have there been in the league right now this year that are like this one? Because I'm guessing Memphis has its PR calamity, but it's not this. It's not at the core of your customer base, a detonation that has shocked the entirety of the sport after a finals appearance and introduced us to a storyline character that keeps giving us chum in the water because we can keep revisiting the shock from months ago in the sport that traffics in drama and storylines.
Yeah, and just to add more context, Tim Cato, who's worked in the Dallas market as like a NBA reporter for a long time, I used to work with him at SB Nation. He wrote, at the end, I didn't feel it was that transparent. That's the thing that stood the most out. If you're going to do it in this way, if you're going to have just a very select number of media members, you're not going to film it, you're not going to televise it. At this point, why not be more transparent about the exact workings of the thing? If you're just going to say the same thing over and over again, defense wins championships when the defense was a top 10 defense after the trade deadline last season, that defense helped them get to the NBA Finals. So basically, like, even the reporters were not sure exactly why they went about the PR in this way. But to Dan's point, like, this is obviously a catastrophe, and so they're not handling it
This
well.
requires a crisis management team, not a PR department, not the people who normally do business for you. This requires somebody from the outside to help new ownership with a strategy that isn't Nico trying to control the local press by saying, hey, lock that door and don't bring your camera phones in here.
I think I do see the value in that the questions that were asked, the journalists were trying to follow Nico's logic in ways that if it's your end of the year presser, cameras are out there, you have your duty is to your readers and ask the most pressing questions.
You can actually have a conversation.
This one, they were like, okay, the trade happened. This was your logic. Now we have a more representative sample. How are we doing according to your plan right now? I thought they extended him a lot, and maybe that was the intention behind it.
And he just kept repeating defense wins championships.
Yeah, confused by his own moves. You could have said that he was doing a really bad job before they traded Luka. They were just 3 games over 500 on the heels of a NBA Finals appearance with some glaring needs, and they didn't address it. They didn't try to get better. In fact, they traded the most popular player in franchise. Not history, but close.
Okay, but I will also say that by giving press conference in which he simply gives you honesty, I knew we had a relationship with Luka. I didn't know it was this. Well, we all kind of found out that at the same time. Like, I know we all know that there was a relationship with Luka, but the reason that this is a PR calamity is because you have new ownership that cannot be trusted in front of microphones to care about the team correctly. They already told you what they think of it. When they made the move, nobody understands. And so there are no right answers to give in a press conference. So stop talking. Like, there's no right answer. All of your answers, wrong. You could bring the press in and try and control the narrative by saying, hey, nobody writes anything about this. We're going to bully you. Because in 2025, powerful people can bully the media. So come in this room, you don't write anything, and we're going to see if we can change this narrative by giving you all this off the record. You can't use any of this. I've been in 100 of those where they call you in and they're trying to control how it is that they get their messaging out. You cannot allow this man to keep speaking on behalf of your team. You need to put him away. That last press conference, Riley talks like 2 or 3 times a year. And the coach has got to be out there all the time. Part of the coach's job is go out there and take that beating. Meet with the press twice a day and go be face and voice for our team in difficult times. It's sort of written into the contract. You're contractually obligated to speak on behalf of our team. They got to get this guy out of public.
Well, that's why I love Zaz's point about Mark Cuban, who still has an ownership stake. He just sold a majority stake. And remember, they kind of greased the rails for the new ownership group by putting everybody at ease. Don't worry, Mark is still going to be involved in the day-to-day activities, the team, and he's still going to be a part of this ownership group. And then, I guess, slowly the public image divested. But this was actually pretty quick. And in terms of people with good public relations appeal that could speak to the fans and what Luka meant to that market, Mark should kind of be out there, unless it's the plan from the ownership group that has a majority stake saying, we don't want you around this at all. But I feel like Cuban can have actually... Yeah, he could have helped you.
He's already done it a couple of times where he's given his own interviews in different places, but all he does is back away from it. He's not helping them. He's making it worse.
He looks great by comparison.
Mark Cuban is actively making this worse for them by saying, I would have never done that. Yeah. Like, that's not helpful.
No, not helpful at all.
And he sits there behind the basket, head in hands, shaking his head when the crowd's chanting, fire Nico, as if, oh, my God, this is so terrible what they've done to my team. Well, you kind of got the ball rolling.
Right. And I could kind of understand that if he were, say, a former coach that someone decided to let go, but he sold this team for a record profit.
Yeah.
It was totally his call. So I don't think you get to be like, sorry, guys, it wasn't really my call here. I'm so sorry. Like, this wasn't inadvertently your call.
I guess the point that I'm making is if an ownership group that it loves the Dallas Mavericks, loves the Mavericks, and was going to continue to do everything right by the Mavericks, if they offered Cuban $1 less, I don't think he sells it to them. I think he takes the highest offer.
Maybe $1. Maybe $1. Billy, you are staring daggers into the side of Zaz's face.
No, I mean, Mark Cuban's full of come on. He also, by the way, thought he was going to run the basketball thing, and then the NBA was like, nah, that's not how this works. So he's kind of like a bitter ex who still has enough to just be around to cause problems for everyone.
Well, he's also like, in Tim Marchman's story, or the ESPN story, he said that Cuban was completely pushed out of basketball operations. So now he's saying that he has nothing to do with this. He's being honest, which is what you're saying you want from Nico, but when you actually are getting honesty from him, you're saying you don't want it.
Understandable, though, that he was pushed out of basketball ops because he sold the team.
I never understand that when like people sell the team or executives or like part of former administration. Like, I was pushed out. It's like, that's how this works. Like, they gave you billions of dollars to get, like, if you sell your house, you can't just stay living in a room of the house because you used to live in this house. It doesn't work like that. They gave you the money, now go away.
Yeah, but this is a house that has like multiple people that own a stake in it. It's not a house owned by a single homeowner. That's the difference.
I would have Mark Cuban live in an efficiency. Like, best case. Like, he can live in a detached efficiency, maybe one of those, like, things that's definitely not legal where you, like, turn a shed in the backyard, you put, like, an air conditioning unit, and then you spray, like, some foam or whatever. Like, yeah, this is safe. That's where Mark Cuban can live, but, like, quietly.
Which NBA team is the equivalent of the efficiency? Like, that's who he has to now go run.
This is the situation, and Jessica has it exactly right. This is a bunch of rich people who own the same vacation home and now have the same dates they want. And Mark Cuban used to and always had first rights to I get the home whenever I want it. Someone else has moved in. He's in a guest room. He's in the cottage out back. He doesn't get the master bedroom anymore. That's a man who got used to having the master bedroom and is now saying, oh, I never built the house or the master bedroom. I never had anything to do with this, as he tried to live in the house with a less of an ownership stake, but the same power. He told us, right? That was public. He said he was going to be running the franchise.
And it ended up not being true. It wasn't possible. But I think the more apt comparison is that he bought the house and then he hired a contractor to make a bunch of updates to it. But that contractor wasn't very good at his job. And then when he left and the house fell apart, he was like, I would have never made those decisions, but you're the one that put the person in place that made them. So to your point, yes, like I think there's plenty of blame to go around.